Welcome to Read Your Comics. Today I'm looking at Superman Special by Walt Simonson. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Daryl. I'm the host of Read Your Comics, and I, like many of us out there, am excited about the James Gunn Superman movie coming out. Now, you're probably already getting a lot of top 10 lists for best Superman reads, and you're going to see a lot of the same stuff on there. All-Star Superman for all seasons, Birthright, Superman versus the Klan, or whatever it's called, and so forth. And I've even done an All-Star Superman issue 1 video already. Go check it out if you haven't. But I also wanted to highlight some of maybe the under the radar Superman stories, just some good Superman reads that if you're new to the character or you've already read all those highlights, maybe you want a little bit more just to kind of get you in the mood for some Superman. Well, I'm going to do a few of those over the next few months. And here we go with this one. This is one I didn't know about really until about a year and a half ago or so. I was digging and I saw this Walt Simonson cover, and that attracted my attention. And then I saw by Walt Simonson right there. I'm a big Walt Simonson fan, love his Thor, his FF, yada yada. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this. I think it was like a $2 book or something where I found it. You probably find it in a dollar bin here and there. But I did not know this book existed until that moment. Now, I want to give a little context for when this book came out. This was in the heart of the Triangle era of Superman. And if you don't know what that was, Superman used to have 4 monthly books, all done by different creative teams, but it was almost like a weekly book. Little story elements were meant to bleed from week to week, and they would put a little yellow triangle on the cover with that week's number on it so that you could kind of follow along. And that lasted for years. That's been a pretty popular way to do it at the time, and it kind of forced fans to buy 4 Superman books. But this was just a special, and I think it kind of falls outside of that triangle storytelling to some degree. Now, also notice it says Doomsday is coming right here. So that kind of gives you an idea too. This is just before the Death of Superman story had just kicked off. Well, I'm going to guess and say probably a month or two before Doomsday starts breaking out of the ground. Now, before I jump into it, I do want to give a quick shout out to all the viewer support. If you're new to the channel or just haven't done so already, go ahead and hit subscribe. I'm going to put the graphic right here for you. Go ahead and do that now so you don't miss any future videos. While you're at it, go ahead and hit like. You can like the video now. You don't have to wait till the end. Like it now, and then at the end, if you really don't like it, you can unlike it. It helps do all those algorithm things to bring more of an audience to the channel. Well, let's jump into this book. I'm going to give a quick synopsis of what this book is really about. It's a one-off story of a creature that kind of saps Superman's powers, much like his villain, the Parasite, does. Except in this instance, it's going to just steal one power at a time every time Superman comes in contact with it. But it's going to start off with Superman flying into the Fortress of Solitude, and I love this cinematic motion of coming in real quick to the fortress, and then all of a sudden Superman is like smashing things and shooting his heat vision at things, and you're like, what is he doing? Is he fighting something? But no, he's actually creating these statues. And this is a callback to a story that John Byrne did in his rebooted Superman post-Crisis, in which he encountered these Kryptonian criminals and ended up killing them with kryptonite exposure. And he felt immense amounts of remorse and guilt about that. So here he's like kind of building a memorial to them, not really to them as people, but as a reminder to himself that there's always a better way than killing. So Simonson doing a good job setting up some like emotional resonance for the story he's going to tell throughout the whole issue. Then he's going to do a good job of establishing Metropolis and his relationship with Lois. And this is where I feel like it kind of is out of the Triangle continuity, because before the death of Superman, Clark and Lois were engaged. But these couple pages here make it seem like they aren't engaged, that they're not even a couple, and that she doesn't even know that Clark is Superman. But we're going to push the story quick with some dialogue about a secret scientific base that nobody knows who owns it or what they're even working on. And in the conversation, we cut to the secret base. And there's some sciencey jargon going on here when there's an explosion. And I love how Simonson uses this bit of storytelling of the sound waves from the panel of the explosion at the base picking up in Clark's ear. Here's some more time reference stuff. Batman Sword of Azrael came out and would kind of be the first part of the Nightfall story in some ways. I love this shot of Superman flying off here. Yeah, he's going to go to the explosion, obviously. Simonson liked it enough that he even put an extra signature there. But, I've seen interviews with Simonson, and he doesn't sell his original work. So it's interesting that he went ahead and signed that one, but he felt that good and confident about that Superman piece. So Superman flies off, and on his way to this science lab, there's another explosion. I don't think Simonson does the greatest job here of showing that this is actually Superman that's being flung into the side of a mountain. I want to point out the lettering, though. I think this is Walt Simonson doing the lettering on this stuff because it reminds me of a lot of the lettering in Thor, the onomatopoeia anyway. Even this, like, the long, stretched out letters and the bada boom, the overlapping on the bada boom right here. And even this scree being little with the rash being loud. Going to introduce some Kirby elements into this. You've got the Newsboy Legion. They're from Cadmus. This is the Whiz Wagon. All of this is from the Jack Kirby, Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen stories. I don't know how much they've been reintroduced already at this point. I know Simonson's wife, Louise, who was writing the Man of Steel title at the time, she was using them a little bit at the beginning of the Doomsday story and throughout the Funeral for a Friend story, but I don't think she really got back to him after that, at least not during the Steel Reign of Superman era. I don't remember much after that, but so they were around again, but I don't know how much they were being used. But here, Walt's going to go ahead and use them too. They're going to jump in the whiz wagon and they're heading to pick up Jimmy, I guess. And Lois is, I'm going to hitch a ride too. Cub reporter, I'm going with you. Here you see where Superman smashed into the wall. Notice how his feet are like dragging the dirt in as he goes. And this feels very much like a Kirby, not a swipe, but like a nod. I almost feel like this is directly from a cover of a Jimmy Olsen issue. And I like the motion here. This is, typical kind of faded figure work as we show Superman rescuing some people. And that's one of the keys to Superman, too. You got to see Superman saving people in these kind of destruction type things that I don't want to get into it, but there's a certain movie where I didn't feel like he did that enough. And here we get a quick glimpse of it. Superman is always there to save people. Lex Luthor shows up, and again, the continuity of this mixed in with whenever this took place versus the Triangle era. Lex Luthor in the books that would have been coming out at this time had died, or his body had died, and he had transferred his mind to a clone body that had long red hair and a big red beard, way overcompensating for being bald in this life. And he came back saying he was his son, Lex Luthor II. But it was really Lex, just his mind inside a new body. But here he's bald, right? So again, this came out just a few months before the Doomsday story where Lex had the red hair and stuff. But here he's definitely more of like your traditional Lex Luthor. So that's why I kind of wanted to highlight this issue, not just because there's a legend of Walt Simonson doing a Superman story, but it's a one-off that's self-contained and it has enough of just the traditional, familiar Superman elements that I think almost anybody that is remotely familiar with Superman could pick this up and read it and enjoy it. So he makes some jokes about how he's like saving his employees, and he's like, "Oh, I guess you were behind this the whole time." And Lex is going to grab a thing of kryptonite. And of course, Superman's shocked at first, but he realizes it's not bothering him. So he goes to grab it, and I love the look on Lex's face right here. Look at that face. The way he's like his head's going back, giving him like a double chin and everything. And Superman grabs it, and great acting going on here with his, takes a bite of it, chomp, 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 gulp. Needs salt. Oh, that's impossible. So whatever they were doing in this lab, I think they were working on some synthetic kryptonite or something, and they were using the chunk of kryptonite that Lex had, and in the process of doing this, they made it inert. So it wasn't even working against Superman anymore. Lois shows up. She's like, "What are you doing here?" He's like, "I've been saving a number of Mr. Luthor's employees, Lois, and he even gave me and Lex jokes and says, I even gave him a little snack." And she says, "A snack?" And as he's flying away, Lex is like, "I can't believe this. Superman's Achilles heel has been destroyed." So on the cover, it said Kryptonite no more, but it was kind of small. And you'd think that would play like a huge element in the story here, but I don't know that it really does. And obviously Kryptonite is around because that's how Lex actually dies and has his body redone and yada yada yada. So I don't know. I don't know where this would exactly fall in the continuity of things. I guess it's like post burn, but not so far along. So as Superman starts to fly away, he stumbles in the air and Lex notices. And I like the gutters being used as passage of time with Superman taking off and then the fall and the recovery. And here's the sand creature that is going to rise up from the dirt of this explosion. So whatever they did in this explosion, it caused like a Sandman to come out of the ground because it's like Superman's shadow almost. This is where it's going to start taking some of Superman's powers as it goes along. And the first thing it's going to take, it it doesn't really display it great here because you just see these like security guards and then one being flung backwards and the blue maybe and the swoosh, but that could have been him like just getting hit back or something. But on the next page we realize Clark is doing the dishes. He's trying to use his super breath to dry the dishes and it doesn't work. And he realizes his super breath is gone. So that's when you start realizing that that's what happened here. So great panels, bringing the monster out. I don't think this is great telling the story of what the monster actually did to the guy. I like this panel here of Clark too, blowing on his hand. Great use of panels here too. A little bit of a panel break. I think Simonson uses slight panel breaks perfectly in this book. I like how he's using his telescopic vision to look down here, and then you've got this little circular panel to show what he's actually looking at. And as he arrives back at the place where he slid into the wall, he gets a feeling of pain again. Now, I guess as the reader, I mean, for me, I was at first thinking like, well, he ate that kryptonite. Maybe something's going on. He's got super indigestion, right? And then he flies away because he realizes I need to get away from whatever's causing me pain. It's in this area. And then the monster, its eyes start burning and it's now got heat vision. Some good stuff with Lex here, who hires a tracker to look for whatever came up out of the desert. And there's some very like backhanded, like you're going to be rewarded for doing a good job, but if you don't do a decent enough job, there's going to be some major consequences. So good shot of Superman here. I like the use of his telescopic vision again. Interesting with the wavelengths. That's almost like a heartbeat. And I like how it's displayed on this one too. This is back at his apartment as well. I think they could have done a better job of showing where he was because it's confusing. If it wasn't for the narration box saying it's back at an apartment, you wouldn't know that that's where he is because then you see the desert and then all of a sudden you see him here being thrown through a wall or he's trying to run away from a wall. And it's the Sandman who's shown up and is yelling out, Clark Kent, Clark Kent. So Superman, of course, is concerned, like, who is this and how do they know what I am? Question, and then surprise. And as it jumps through the window, it can't fly. It can fly. And then he's like, no, it can't. And it hit the ground, and because it's sand, it just kind of fell apart. But Superman, he doesn't go down to investigate. He flies off again to go back to the area again to try to get close enough to it to see what's going on. When the Sandman rises back up and now it's got heat vision, or it had the heat vision. He's getting more and more of Superman's powers and taking on more of Superman's shape as it goes along. Lex comes in and wants to make a deal with the Thing. Solid panel work here. I like the use of the circular panels that Simonson employs here, and that's kind of something he does a lot, is circular shapes. And look at the energy bolts here too. They're almost like a smoothed out diamond. And on these pages, Lex is using a hologram to basically just gauge the Sandman's hatred for Superman. Great use of panels here of zooming in of Superman out contemplating, trying to use his telescopic vision to check out the scene of where the lab was again. When he hears some gunfire in the distance and decides he better go take care of that back in Metropolis, and it's all a trap. This feels very Bronze Age Superman to me. But as he gets close, he falls, and now his power of flight is all of a sudden gone. When the Sandman leaps out, and they have a throwdown. This feels like it's straight out of a Thor Beta Ray Bill confrontation. The Newsboy Legion and Jimmy show up in the Whiz Wagon, so that's kind of why we established that earlier. They didn't do a whole lot at the beginning of the book, but it's all coming down to Superman, who's going to need the Whiz Wagon in a second to fly, because now Superman can't fly. Look at this panel with the Kirby crackle around it and stuff. So Simonson definitely using this as a chance to really play with the Kirby aspects of the Superman lore. And the Newsboy Legion helps take out the rest of the robbers that were more or less a distraction. Since Superman is distracted with the Sandman creature, Jimmy tries to run it over to help Superman because he's giving Superman a thrashing. And then it grabs Jimmy, and Superman jumps in the Whiz Wagon. He's like, "So long, sucker." And Superman takes off in the Whiz Wagon. So the whole thing of establishing the Newsboy Legion and driving around in the Whiz Wagon, I think, was just to give Superman a vehicle to escape or lead the creature away from Metropolis. Which he does. He drops Jimmy and goes, and even here Superman's thinking, I knew if I flew away that it would follow and drop Jimmy. So he knew that he was kind of saving Jimmy in his escape, even though it looks like, I don't believe it, Superman's running. And Superman leads him with the Whiz Wagon, which must fly very fast, to the Fortress of Solitude, where they continue to just have this throwdown through the Fortress of Solitude, more and more, sapping his powers away. It came like, first it was his super breath, then his heat vision, then his flight, and his invulnerability is kind of the last thing to go. But the more it takes from Superman, the more it starts to look like Superman, even to the point of finally taking on the color as it marches down this tunnel here, which is we saw at the beginning of the issue, where seems to be a defeated Superman, but maybe he's playing a little bit right here. And then he reaches in to kiss. This panel's kind of crazy. Is he kissing him? Like, what's going on there? Or is he just grabbing him, pulling him in real close? Looks like he's kissing him. Superman is kissing himself. And this feedback is also, I guess, sharing memories, because that's how it knew Clark Kent was Superman. And then it's getting a little bit more intelligent each time. So it's not just taking on his powers, it's kind of taking his memories. And then it sees the statues of the Kryptonian criminals, and it feels the guilt of murder. It's really taking on Superman's whole persona. And then this is the Sandman, looking like Superman, goes and destroys the statues that Superman built at the beginning of the issue. And that's a great shot with just slight panel breaks with the rubble breaking out, really, popping off the page there. And our real Superman is pretty laid out. The Sandman is basically beating him. So anybody who tells you Superman doesn't have weaknesses other than kryptonite, he can. And they come up with creative ways to weaken Superman when the story dictates it. And when it realizes Superman is like near death's door, and it's feeling the remorse that Superman carries for murdering or executing the Kryptonian criminals, Zod and company, It goes over to help Superman and just basically has like a mental breakdown and explodes, I guess. Now, you see Superman back in Lex's office. You could infer something out of this, like it's almost like a clone of Superman, and there's just a big explosion, and only one of them emerges. Is it the real Superman, or is it the Sandman? But I think we're supposed to infer that the Sandman version of Superman kind of like combusted, right? And when it did, all the powers reverted back to the real Superman, who went to pay Lex a visit for sicking the Sandman on him and pointing out that nope, I'm still going to be around. And that's what makes it just a fun one-off Superman story. Like I said earlier, it has all those like elements of like Clark and Lois, Lex, Jimmy. You get a little bit of Kirby stuff sprinkled in there that might be confusing if you're unfamiliar with that, but I think it's just enough to roll with. And I don't really put this up there with the For All Seasons, All Star, etc. But I do think it's just a fun Superman story that if you're just wanting to read some more good Superman, it's definitely a good one to pick up if you find it out there. Barry Windsor Smith pinup, that's pretty awesome. This Superman pinup by Frank Miller is a lot like the covers he's doing for Marvel right now. And, you know, there's so much backlash on those covers. People act like it's like a new style for Frank Miller, and this is 1992, and here it's the same exact style, right? I mean, strip some of this color out of this, and it's the same exact style. I like that pinup a lot. This is Kurt Swan and Art T-Bear. Michael Golden doing a great job with some realistic fighter jets here. John J. Muth, who's getting into all the Fleischer elements, the speeding train, Zeppelin coming in, a damsel in distress on the railroad track, and a giant, it's not really a dinosaur or a dragon, like kind of a dino dragon. Todd McFarlane doing a killer one right here. He's got to give him that crazy giant hair up front. Look at his cape coming off. Of course, it's McFarlane, so he's going to have a big cape. 1992, this is also right around the time McFarlane was launching Spawn. So it may have come out, you know, within a month or so of Spawn #1. So it's kind of funny to see a DC image when McFarlane had kind of told both Marvel and DC where they can go kick rocks for a while. But who knows when he actually did it, when they asked him to do it. It may have been Walt Simonson said, like, hey, do this pinup to fill out a couple pages for me. This Jeff Darrow one is awesome. You got to go out and get this book for this Jeff Darrow one, because there's something going on in every one of these windows, on top of this like crazy looking crustacean robot creature that Superman is taking on. I would love Jeff Darrow to do a one shot or a mini series of Superman like this. That's just awesome. And that's pretty much it. So again, just a nice one-off Superman story. I recommend it if you see it out there. Until next time, read your comics. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed my breakdown of this issue, you can support the channel by hitting subscribe. It costs you nothing and helps other comic fans find the channel. You can also visit readyourcomics.com for cool merch, like this. Read Your Comics isn't just a brand, it's a mantra. And when you wear a Read Your Comics shirt, you are helping spread the word. For more classic comics conversation, be sure to follow me on Instagram at read.your.comics. And if you're still here, why not watch one of my older videos? Here or here.